Hello everyone, today we're taking a look at the HGLRC MotoWhoop. And normally when we get a quad, we can kind of look at it and kind of place it in one of the neat little categories we have. Tiny whoops and whoop, 5-inch quad, micro quad, ultralight, toothpick, what have you. But this one confuses me a little bit. And when I look at it and knowing the weight, which it's pretty heavy for this size of prop, I kind of didn't know exactly what to expect, and I didn't have very high hopes. I am fairly surprised and pleased, but so it does several things pretty well. I think the thing it does best for me is the SinWhooping. It has very stable footage, although it's not perfect. But oddly enough, you can fly it inside your house, as I will show in this video. And you are limited by the camera angle, because the camera angle doesn't go up very high because of the canopy. So speed isn't its forte, but it also flies pretty dang well outside in more of an aggressive sort of freestyle sort of manner. And of course, you could also use it to just kind of cruise around and explore. So where does this one fit? I don't really know, but I'll leave that for you to judge. In this video, I've got 3 different flights. We've got, kind of a slow SinWhoop sort of flight. We've got an inside the house, slightly more aggressive. And then we've also got a more aggressive outside flight where I do a few of the minor Acro maneuvers that you would come to expect on this channel. And then I'll wrap up the flight footage with 2 of my most dramatic crashes because I did have a little bit of damage. Let's first start off with the specs and then we'll get on with those flights. One of the main features is going to be the Caddx Vista that's inside here along with the Caddx Nebula camera. We're going to talk somewhat extensively about this camera. The motors are 1106 3800 kV. On those motors are the Emax Avon quad-bladed 2-inch props. The all-in-one board down here is the Zeus 13 all-in-one, which is 3 to 6S compatible and has a 13 amp ESC. Of course, we can't miss it, but it's got prop guards. But I want to draw your attention to the fact that this little lip, which we typically see on the top of the prop guard, is on the lower section. You also get an extra set of prop guards, an extra set of props, 2 baggies with various screws and nuts, a USB right angle adapter, this is very important, don't lose it, an extra battery strap, a little screwdriver, introduction to the Vista guide, receiver, in my case it has the FrSky XM Plus, a quick start guide here which is printed on the front and the back, QC card, and last but not least, stickers. Motor post to motor post, it does look like 90 millimeters. Getting my calipers in there to get a bite on that frame is a little bit of a challenge, but I would say that bottom carbon fiber plate is 1.5 millimeters thick. And the arms are just about 6 millimeters wide. It weighs 113 grams. I flew it primarily on this GNB 4S 450 milliamp battery, which brings the weight up to just over 165 grams. I also flew it on this AU line or Gold line 4S 500 milliamp battery. I wouldn't fly a battery this weight. With the AU line or Gold line battery, it weighs 178.5 grams. For your information, that Gold line battery is 65.5 grams. I don't have any 300 milliamp 4S batteries, which is part of that recommended range. So I tried these 260s, but the flight's about a minute long. With the 260 milliamp battery, we get 144.5 grams. We're going to start off with the SinWhoop sort of flight, sort of stay flat, get the video of the image that you want or the scene that you want. We're not going to be doing any moves in this. This flight, for your information, is going to be 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Nice and steady. Nice calm day, but we do have a bit of a breeze. Sometimes that breeze kicks up. Weather data for this day was that the wind was in the range of 7 to 9 miles an hour, although we're in town and generally weather data is measured outside of town. So I think it's much calmer than that on this particular day, especially when I'm close to the fence line or other objects that have the potential of stopping the wind from hitting the quad. And if you watch this on a large monitor in a full screen sort of format, you will see that the video is less than perfectly stable. It's very good. I would say that as far as SinWhooping goes, this is very good. And going back and looking at some of my other SinWhoops, this was more stable than many of them. Of course, a traditional SinWhoop, you mount a GoPro to, and then you can use Real Steady to just lock in that video. And this doesn't have the ability, at least natively, to be able to mount any sort of third-party camera. The canopy, it just isn't designed for that. That doesn't stop us from designing a canopy for it, but that could throw off the PID tune if we mount additional weight on top. Of course, additional weight on top will also shorten the flight time. Something else I wanted to talk about while we have time during this longer video is this Nebula camera really kind of caught me off guard. I've reviewed the Nebula, both version 1 and version 2. Of course, they were in the warmer months where we had more leaves, more heat, more humidity. And that camera had a lot of, at that time, had a lot of sort of artifacts in it. And as I flew this, I kept looking for those artifacts, the haloing, the shimmering, kind of almost a digital type of artifact, especially around the leaves back when I reviewed those, and I'm just not seeing it. So I don't know if something's changed with that camera or if my environment has just changed. So it's something to be aware when it comes to this nebula camera, is that you may have different results. If you look on my channel and you go back to, what was it, July or August, and you look at some of those quads that had the nebula on it, you'll notice some of the things that I'm talking about. So this actually looks pretty good as far as image goes. And no, it's not as good as the DJI camera, but the DJI camera weighs, what, 7 grams more, so it would even pack on more weight. So the camera was one item I think you need to kind of do your homework on, and you need to be comfortable with it, because when you're flying the DJI system, one of the things that you are paying for is not only the transmission and control, but also that camera. Go down to the creek and we do a little exploration. I've got a little fun sneak through a root of a tree coming up here in a moment. SinWhooping is kind of hard, especially if there's any sort of breeze. I know a lot of people, I'm surprised at the number of people who enjoy it. Now, I get it, some of the guys that are making a living doing FPV sort of stuff or drone stuff probably have to have one of maybe several different SinWhoops in their arsenal, depending upon the job they need. But I'm finding it more and more posting on Facebook of, you know, these sorts of slow, cruisy sort of shots with some fancy transitions in between them that are pretty interesting, being shared on Instagram as well. By the way, if you message me on Instagram, I do a really poor job of checking over there, so forgive me if I don't get back to you right away. It may take me a couple days or even longer to notice that I have a message sitting for me over on Instagram, so be careful. On that same note, there's been a lot more comments and activity in the comment section of the channel. If I happen to miss your comment, don't think that I'm ignoring you. You know, if you definitely posed whatever information that you posted, the words you put together made a question and you posed it as a question, I will certainly try to get back to you. Not all comments require or need a response, so maybe I can be confused about the fact whether I read it as a statement rather than a comment or a need for help. So just hit me back up if you feel like I'm ignoring you, because I promise I am not. I've had that happen a couple times where people thought I was ignoring them, and the fact was that I just missed their message. I try very much to try to help everybody I can, but I do have a day job, I do have a family, and even if I didn't have a day job and I didn't have a family, I think I would have a propensity to miss some of the messages. We're going to go into the inside faster flight here in just a moment. There we are. There are some seconds, so if you're looking at the timeline in YouTube and measuring the times of the flights, you will find that there are differences between what I've described previously versus what you see. And that's because this is the Vista unit. You can't start the recording until you arm it. Actually, I've got mine set up to record on arm. So I have about 15 to maybe 20 seconds on each one of these flights that you don't see, because I synchronize of the audio camera that I use. I have it sitting on the table. You might be able to see it there. I synchronize the audio from that camera to the DVR or the Vista recording, and that's something I've been doing for a long time, but I do find that we have new people that come to the channel and they ask about the audio recording. Sometimes I get some feedback after someone's bought a quad and says, mine doesn't record audio, how do I make it record audio? That's part of the editing process. That's kind of one of those things that I like to do. When I watch back the footage and it has the audio from the quad, the same audio I heard as the person flying it, I enjoy the video a little bit more, and I think many of you have commented about that, so I just want to make sure I clarify that. Now, back to the flight. You know, this thing is not light. It does... I'm surprised it flew so well. I'm surprised I was able to handle it in the house so well. I do know I have a big house, so this isn't going to be appropriate for all of you, but if you're looking to fly it inside and you were wondering what the flight would be like inside, this is a pretty good sample, depending upon the space that you have plans to fly yours in. The flight time for this flight is 2 minutes and 34 seconds, which I think is off. I either ended too early or I didn't have a fully charged battery, because the next flight that we're going to see is the more aggressive outside flight, and that flight went 3 minutes and 4 seconds. So I think it's probably a combination of both. Probably not a fully charged battery, or I ended a little bit early on the voltage, or I went too long on the next flight that we're going to see. So keep that in mind when you're measuring the flight time on this. We have a bunch of different variables in there, and you also have a bunch of different comparisons that you can make, at least the 3 different flights that I'm showing in this video. And as you see during the flight, I get a little bit more aggressive the deeper I get into the battery. Now, that's not unusual for me. I think it's just a comfort level. It doesn't matter how many batteries I fly time and time again. pretty much every time I start out a little bit slower and I end a little bit stronger. Maybe that makes me a poor racer, I think. I think you need to start strong and finish strong if you're racing. But anyways, you know, just an amateur pilot here having some fun in this home. More aggressive flight here as soon as I take off and get off the table. So this is going to be, again, I'm flying at the maximum camera angle that the canopy will allow through all these different flights. That might not be what you want to do, but you do see that we don't have the hoops in view. And this flight gives you a better idea of some of the capabilities that I can put it through and test it. And I use this flight, not because it's great, because right away there, I went for a punch, a dive, whatever you want to call that maneuver. And we had the yaw washout where it pitched up and then it rotated around. It was pretty dramatic. So even if you have a fresh battery, you're probably going to experience yaw washout. But what I did find was that if you keep your height down, you don't experience that yaw washout. So you saw there as I was above the house and I went down. But if I go up to about the top of the chimney level and go down, as you just saw, those dives are fine all the way through the battery. So it seems to be that there's a height limit to this quad and avoiding the yaw washout. So something to keep in mind. Got to know what you're getting into when you buy these things. That's why I fly things a lot. That way I can learn as much as I can and I can convey as much as I can to those who choose to watch the entire video. Most videos only get about 5 to maybe 7 minutes on the more popular stuff. This video is probably going to be closer to 20 minutes by the time it's all said and done. So I will include a timeline down in the video description. You can click that. You should also see in the scroll bar to where the play area of within YouTube has kind of chunks or sections blocked up to where you can just put your mouse over it and you can see what that section's called. I'll call them like, you know, SinWhooping or indoor flight or outside fast or something. I'll come up with something to call it, and then you can just click on those sections in order to get quickly from one type of flight to another. But I chose this because, again, it's not a great flight, but what it does do is several different things that you should be aware of when you're looking at maybe making a purchase of this. Flips and rolls, those things, it does very well. The tune's actually really good. I do that kind of a quick turn through the Y in the tree to kind of test prop wash and its quick turning ability, and do you get any jitters in the video? You know, when you have a high definition video feed, you're looking at those things that maybe decrease the quality or your enjoyment in the flight, and one of those things is any jitters that you might have from the PID tune. But I was very, very happy with the PID tune. I just put my rates in, moved a few things down like I do in everything in the OSD elements, and then I just went out and flew it. And I did fly it, as I said, on that 260 milliamp battery, and the flights were only about a minute. So I think if you're looking at purchase, I would get the 450 milliamp G&B battery. The reason why I weighed the gold line or the AU line battery was because I found that when I flew that battery at its additional weight, that it impacted the pin tune and the flyability. These are my crashes. We're going to start off with the inside crashes. Actually, it's just 2 crashes, but I swooped down here at the bottom of the stairs, bounce off that little railing, whang, right into the wall. I believe that broke one of the whoops. And then on this one, this is actually a longer section, just a little bit more fly time before we get to the crash part. But I showed you that dive or that punch out, whatever you want to call it, again, right over that bush. Things went fine. But where I have my crash, you're going to see where I, again, get yaw washout. That height difference, and I think it has to do with the velocity that we're coming down at. That changes what the quad can handle effectively. So if you reach that velocity and you're coming down, I suppose maybe if you're even going forward, it's going to impact the flight a little bit there too. See, yaw washout, bounce. Normally I disarm, but I ended up over in my neighbor's yard. Thankfully, their dogs weren't out, but as you can see there, we can take back off. We're even going to do a little celebration roll. Everything looks good. Props not even hardly damaged enough to affect the tune. Video still looks stable and good. So you've seen all my flight footage. What do you think of this? Where does it belong in this category? And what did you think of the performance? Did it surprise you? Did you expect this? You've probably seen other videos, but come on. Give it an honest go. What did you think of this particular quad? The other question I have is, if you have DJI goggles, maybe even the radio, do you look at a quad like this? Do you look at micros at all, knowing that you have that extra weight? Maybe you have separated your micros for analog only. I'm curious to know what you think about DJI, digital, FPV, and the weight of those systems and micros. Do you fly them or do you not? So if you would, leave your comment down below about those few things I have thrown your way.
I'm going to start off by weighing the two batteries. The one I don't recommend, it's not that I don't like the brand or anything, it's the weight of the battery that I think has the greatest impact, and that comes in a little over 65 grams. If we weigh the G&B 450, again 4S, we come in at 52 grams. So 50 milliamp different as far as what the label says and the flight time says. Kind of coincides with this a little bit, but there's a big weight difference. I wouldn't go over the 450 or it is going to impact your flight. And then down to the damage. Let's see, I did break two of these whoops. You can see I broke this one right here. See how I'm kind of pulling it? Maybe you can see daylight through there. This one is especially weak because I got to fussing with it and I broke it more. But this whoop is also broken on the inside. I'm trying to figure out a good way to show you this. Can you see it right there below my thumb? Close my index finger. I'm not showing that very well. That one, it's broken there as well. And then I had one more. Where'd that go? There it is. This one right here broke. Now, they broke, during one of those many flights, and I kept flying it. And if you look at my props, the props actually look pretty good. And it didn't really impact my flight. Again, I didn't change the props. I think this one, the tip got turned down a little bit. Maybe. And maybe this one got turned up a touch. So surprisingly, even with broken ducts, then it flew really well. And you could take the ducts off and fly it, but the problem with that is the canopy is mounted to the ducts. There's no canopy contact with the frame. So as you can see there, the Vista is mounted up inside the canopy through these two screws that come through the sides. And then the canopy is all holding the Vista up off the main board. And then we have two screws on each end of the canopy that hold up or connect it to the ducts, gives it additional rigidity or firmness. We don't have any on the back. We have the separate TPU piece that holds in our receiver antennas. Of course, if you get the ones without the receiver, you do save a little bit of money, of course, because you're not asking them to put a receiver in. If you have the DJI remote control, you can fly it just with that. Give you a little bit of a closer look at the camera here, and you can see that there's very little camera adjustment that you can get. Let me push it all the way down. That's the lowest position. That's the highest position. So I just put it at the highest position and flew it all the time. After the crash in my neighbor's yard, the camera did come down a little bit. So, this isn't really firmly in there, at least during my flights. Maybe I need a couple more turns on the screws, and that might have shored up my stabilized video a little bit as well. And then back here, this is fairly interesting, the antenna. It's kind of got this rubber mount. It's pretty flexible, so that should help keep it from breaking or getting pulled out. It should just flex and go down with things. It is left-hand polarized, so if you've changed your antennas on your goggles, you might have to, hopefully you still have those around. And then they've secured it in there with a zip tie, just kind of squeezing things inside there so it doesn't pull out. It's securely in there. I don't have any problems with that. Something else that's important is this right angle adapter for your USB access. I don't know how well you can see that, but you can kind of see the wires and then that strut off the whoop. Let me get my little flashlight out and add some artificial light here. Maybe now you can see it. See how close it is? So that's a fairly tight fit, and you're not going to really be able to get your fingers down in there very well. So when you remove that, you're going to kind of want to use the bottom side and wiggle it out. Let me see if I can do it on camera. So this is what I would do. I would try to get my fingers underneath it. I don't know if I can do it, because you don't want to put a lot of pressure in one angle or another, but you want to get it wiggled out of there somehow. So I'm just going to kind of get my fingers under there. Okay, so now it's pretty much loose. Those USB clips are out of there. So now I should be able to just gently wiggle it out. Oh, I'm caught on a wire, I think. There, I got it. So you've got wires, and you've got the heat shrink that comes around the motor wires right when it comes out of the mower. And then you've got the strut from the whoop that also kind of in the way. But this is going to be really important, because otherwise, to get USB access, you're taking this entire assembly off over here. So you've got that screw, the 4 screws down below, and then you'll be able to get USB access that way. But sure, it'll be a lot better if you just make sure you don't lose this guy. Something that's interesting, it almost makes it look like these whoops or these ducks are made for something else, is it's got these little standoffs, like the quad should sit on it, and maybe they have another model coming, or maybe they have a model I missed that could use those, maybe a top-mounted battery. But in this particular case, they really don't provide us any use. Even without a battery, you're just kind of teetering onto one of them. It's not really sitting on those. So it's a fraction of a bit of weight, but you could probably just snip those off. But quite honestly, at the weight we're dealing with, that is not going to make a hoot of difference. So I wouldn't bother, but you know, it's there. Oh, we didn't look at the carbon, did we? This carbon weave is not very easy to see. Trying to, there at the bottom side, you can see the weave there. I know that people like to look at the weave. And when you try to bend this, it's kind of a non-test because the hoops or ducts are all connected to the TPU canopy to give it some extra durability, which is a good thing. But see how you see it spreading there? So it's, you know, not hugely thick, but I think it was a good idea. I actually like how it looks and the design around it. Having a little bit of carbon down there gives you a little bit extra assurance that it's going to be fairly tough. They do include a battery mat. I didn't touch on that in the specs. This came for stock from the manufacturer, and it is a rubberized mat, so your battery should stay in there pretty securely. If we look at it this way, we can see if you really hunker that down, you may be depressing those screws into your battery just a touch. But inspecting my batteries, it's kind of hard to tell. These batteries have been through the mill. I might have a little bit of indentation on them, but not much. And as you can see, one of the things that I do with my batteries is I tie up the balance lead within. Oh, look, I got a cut in that battery lead. I never noticed that before. Oh, I didn't have that focus. Let me focus that so you can see that. Don't know what quad that happened with. Just an added little nugget. But I put a twist in there, and then I fish my battery balance lead through there, and then I give it another twist before I plug it in. And that has a tendency to keep my balance lead from getting in the way. You can also bring this back and fold it back this way and just take a simple rubber band, a thin rubber band maybe, and just put it around there. That also keeps the balance lead out of the way. Whatever your preference is, I just tend to do this because it's dead simple and allows me to get access to the balance lead when I need to do more charging, because I am oftentimes charging batteries. Price point, this comes in at $269 if you get it without a receiver, and as in most cases when you add the DJI system, in this case, it's Caddx products, the Vista and the Nebula. The price jumps up quite a bit. So you've already probably got an investment in DJI stuff if you're looking at this quad, and you probably know what to expect. But I like to try to mention it when I remember to, the price point, because it is an important part of the purchase decision. I enjoyed flying it. Maybe it was because of the surprise, because of the weight, because of the form factor. I didn't expect it to fly the way it did. I did not expect it to have the aggressive flight. I thought it would strictly be a SinWhoop type of quad. And I think the people who will want this are going to be people who are, you know, either going to get invested in the DJI FPV system, or they already are, and you want a product that you can maybe fly and you have a little bit more of a safety factor because the prop guards, or you just like this form factor or look. Of course, if you have the DJI radio, you have really great range as well with those radios, probably more than this XM Plus does with FR Sky. I think it's a very interesting product, and I'm very interested to know what you guys think. So if you haven't already, please leave your thoughts on the HGLRC MotoWhoop down in the comment section below. And if you have any other comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please let me know in the section down below. I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.